Yeah, yeah, right. Well, welcome everybody, and thank you for carving out this hour of your day. I am Greg Padu, Regional Planner at the Hancock County Planning Commission. Also joined this morning by Olivia Jolly, another Regional Planner in our office, and we will be hosting these monthly housing forums for the Blue Hill Peninsula um, throughout the next 12 months or so. And very excited to have you all joining us. Uh, Main goal of these, as we'll get into in a little bit, is just to continue the housing conversation and all the housing work that is continued to happen on the peninsula. Um, Gathering housing stakeholders to share ideas, give presentations, and start moving and continue to move all of our housing projects and ideas forward. And so this morning, I'm going to give a brief overview of all the housing work that is going on in the peninsula and is going on around the county. And then we'll do some quick introductions and icebreaker activity, which you don't have to be too nervous about. It's just one question. And then we'll kind of use the rest of the day here to talk about what we want this forum to look like as far as structure, maybe adjusting the time, who we want else to participate, those types of questions. And so without further ado, my screen and we will get things going. All right. We can all see that. Okay, excellent. Again, quick structure for today. Um, Over the housing work we're doing, we'll give some introductions and then we'll figure out exactly what and how these forums are going to proceed. So the reason that these forums exist is that back in February 2025, the town of Castine, along with the towns of Brooksville and Surrey, were all joint applicants for a municipal housing grant, and that was awarded to the town. Well, I should say the grant was applied for March 2024, had to wait around a year. We're finally notified of the awards in February 2025. And so Castine is sort of the lead of this project, but we've been talking with other representatives from the peninsula and starting to organize all the projects within this grant and how everything is going to move forward. And all the projects within this grant have a contract date until December 2026. The forums are just one of several projects that were written to this grant. Um, that also includes establishing a housing task force, which is still in the early stages, but uh, hoping to gather representatives from each of the peninsula towns to sort of provide some insight and guidance for all the projects within this grant. And I've reached out to town select boards, but hopefully throughout this group and some other conversations, we can get some engaged and interested folks to be part of that task force and help all these projects move along. There is a project for education and engagement surrounding Nesterly, the home sharing service that Maine Housing started a partnership with last year. So that project is still in the early stages. There is going to be a housing inventory and usage analysis for the three applicant towns, Brooksville, Castine, and Surrey. And over the last several months, the steering committee that we've organized as part of this grant has met and developed a RFP for several additional projects within this grant that was actually just recently made public and is going to be available for consultants and firms to review and submit bids on by the end of the month for three separate projects. That includes an implementation plan of all the housing goals and land use goals and strategies that are all in our peninsula comprehensive plans. Every town on the peninsula has recently updated their comprehensive plan within the last several years. And so one of the projects is to analyze all those goals and put together a plan to help us jointly move forward in implementing them. A second project is several tasks to incentivize the development of accessory dwelling units on the peninsula. And another project is the creation of a multifaceted developer attraction plan. Various projects within that project to um, peninsula, and particularly development that and housing that the peninsula needs. So all that work will be happening over the next months or so, and this group will be a great way to stay informed of all of that and ask questions and stay updated on everything that's going on. Um, Additionally, the town of Sullivan on the Scoop Peninsula also received a municipal housing grant in February 2025. And so there are additional projects happening on the Scudic part of the county. And HCPC received its own Housing Opportunity Program grant last winter. And we have a handful of projects that we will be also executing throughout the next 12 months or so. And that's all in addition to the first Housing Opportunity Program grant that HCPC received in 2023 and projects that we executed all throughout 2024. So within the last couple of years, really continuing to roll the ball on housing. I think we've all identified that it's a need. And all of these grants and funding opportunities have been made available through the Housing Opportunity Program and the Maine Department of Economic and Community Development. Of course, the Housing Opportunity Program is now rolled into the Maine Office of Community Affairs. No significant changes, just a new structure. So exactly what is the purpose of these forums? As I mentioned earlier, we're gathering together municipal officials, leaders, partner organizations, nonprofits, other housing stakeholders, employers, all in one space to continue the housing conversation. We want to create a consistent space for identifying and discussing these needs and new projects. That was the main focus of this, is to establish a time and a place where we can designate our energy to talking about this, as well as building connections. Not everyone in this group or on the peninsula knows each other. It's a relatively big area. So as time goes on, hopefully we can get to know each other a little more, collaborate on projects, and continue to identify how to improve the housing situation on the peninsula. How are we doing this? Facilitating and promoting conversation. This is a safe space to share ideas and thoughts. Hopefully do a little bit of education, either through presentations or sharing of project examples. Everyone is welcome to bring their own project ideas and lessons learned. And in the long term, this group will lay the groundwork for future projects on the peninsula, be it physical development or otherwise. And so, starting today, I figure if we are able to, a handful of folks in here, which is excellent. I will, I guess, call on you as the order that you appear on my screen, but just a quick introduction of who you are, who you're representing, and then what you might consider was your best housing experience. And that can be a physical place you've lived, or a home and the way it made you feel, or a neighborhood that you lived in, or something along those lines. So I will go first. My name is Greg Paduke, Regional Planner here at the Hancock County Planning Commission. And one of my best housing experiences was probably when I was living in Columbus, Ohio. I was living in a historic village that was very walkable, had great access to local restaurants, and a really nice park. And it was just a safe and inviting experience that made you feel uh, like you had a sense of place and community. And the whole experience was just really boosted my time there. Let's go next to Olivia.
Hi
Good
all.
morning.
I have my video and audio turned off. I'm currently um on Swans Island, which is my one of my best housing experiences, living in a small community where to get from one end to the other, you walk an hour to get to anywhere you need to go, and everyone knows everyone and everyone waves unless you really did something to make someone angry. But at least you know. Um and I work with Hancock County Planning Commission. My main focus is broadband and digital opportunities, but I'm supporting our housing and community resilience work.
Thank you. Clifton Page, if you're able.
Hi, um, Clifton Page, Blue Hill. Last October, a number of us started the Peninsula Housing Coalition, whose purpose is to encourage the development of affordable housing on the Blue Hill Peninsula. And we've been meeting twice a month since then and are pulling all the information together that we need, working with Genesis, various other organizations, and we're really keen to try to get more affordable housing on the peninsula.
Excellent. Yeah, we'll stop sharing my screen for a second so we can all see each other for this part. That's great that the Housing Coalition is active, and hopefully this can be a big part of that moving forward. Let's go with George from Surrey.
Uh, Good morning, George Borowski, Surrey. My personal best housing experience was in the early 80s when I was part of the pioneering group that started the restoration of old 18th and 19th century warehouses in downtown Philadelphia. And I lived for 13 years in a 2,400 square foot, one room loft, 2 blocks from where Ben Franklin flew his kite. And we were an exciting, emerging, pioneering community that created the preconditions that have led to the old city restoration.
So, thank you. Michael. Michael, you are on mute.
That's better. Michael
Gotcha.
Sheehan, I'm from Sedgwick. I'm on the board of Blue Hill Heritage Trust. And my best housing experience is currently under construction. A number of years ago, we bought some land in downtown Blue Hill, and I'm just about finished building a house there. We were excited about the possibility of living closer to services and have less reliance on driving cars and the walkability of everything. And yeah, hopefully we'll be actually living in the best housing experience in about 3 or 4 months.
Well, welcome. Thanks for joining us. Alan.
Thank you, Greg. Alan Kratz, co-coordinator of Blue Hill Peninsula Tomorrow. We're a 9-town network of community officials working mainly on climate issues. We certainly realize that housing is fundamental to achieving climate resilience in our community. My best housing experience is one where I am able to walk, and even in the hamlet of Harborside in Brooksville, a walk is an opportunity to meet neighbors. Have to factor if there's going to be a Zoom call at the end of the walk, for some work I have to do, I have to factor in a couple of extra minutes to talk to people along the way because it's that type of community. That's a good example of good housing.
Thanks, Alan. Bruce.
Bruce Stanky, Brooksville. Um, Currently the chair of the Brooksville Housing Committee, as well as on Clifton's Peninsula group. And best housing experience, I guess, was building our own house here, of course. But I would say in a maybe less personal way, been involved in a lot of housing projects, mostly in Boston.
Excellent. Thank you. Let's go to George Fields.
Yeah, that's where it all started.
I, George Fields, Blue Hill Heritage Trust. My best housing experience is 180 degrees of what everybody else has said. Living in the mountains, built a log home. It was probably the best and worst experience along the way. So I'm looking forward to interacting with this group and seeing what we can do for the peninsula.
Sounds pretty amazing. Thanks for joining us, George. Kathy.
Hi, I'm Kathy Tracy from Surrey. I'm a member of the Surrey Economic and Community Development Corporation. Was appointed to be part of the housing project for Surrey. My best experience, I'm going to kind of bifurcate it, was young. I lived in Shadyside, which is a very vibrant part of Pittsburgh, which was obviously urban. Jump out the door, everything was there, walk, public transportation. And then when I got older, the suburban experience, living in a neighborhood with safe kids close by, could ride their bikes, could walk down the street. And that's a great environment for kids because it's nice for them to have people next door to them and they can develop those relationships and not be remote from other people.
Sure. Thank you. Lisa Durkee.
Hi. Um, I think that the most meaningful was unusual by today's standards or our conversation standards. I worked with a bunch of men who were living in transitional housing, most of them having been incarcerated for drug-related offenses, but working over the course of years and getting to know a lot of them, having a solid home from which they could work and where they knew true welcome was essential and gave so much to the surrounding community as well, that's something I always have had in the back of my mind since for the last 20 years or so, thinking that wherever possible we might work to develop that while we're looking for housing for folks who have not slipped in those ways.
Yeah. Sounds rewarding in another way. And who are you representing this
Sorry,
morning?
for the church, the Congregational Church in Blue Hill, and also I'm was grateful to the peninsula, what has become the Peninsula Housing Coalition, with Clifton, with Bruce, and others, really looking to know what are the variety of ways that we might help to facilitate affordable housing.
Excellent. Well, thank you for joining us.
Thanks.
Becky.
You're muted, Becky.
Also unmute Becky.
This. Hey, I'm sorry, I couldn't find my mute button. All right, so I'm also with the Peninsula Housing Committee, or whatever we're calling ourselves. I joined primarily to represent Harborview, the Harborview campus that has 27 units that are supported by government funds, either. And this is my best housing experience. I have to say that I grew up in a theater. I've lived in an artistic, completely mobile community for God until I had kids, where I moved in with my mother, and that was okay. That worked, and that got me back to Maine. But basically, somebody who's been sort of permanently unhoused for most of our life, I think I can bring a lot of experience and information about what that is like. Before I got this, in order to get this apartment, I lived in a cabin out in the woods without water, electricity, yes, but no water and a bunch of other stuff so that I could wait out to be on this list in this incredible community. It took me 5 years and a bit of, I'm sorry I'm going on, but I think this is important for people to know from where I'm coming from. It took me 5 years, and also the list was being mishandled, and I had to straighten that out. before I could actually move forward to get this apartment. So this is the most safe, the most community. I love Harborview Apartments. I'm very sorry that it's been allowed to go private, and that now people who are coming in are having to pay $1,200 to $1,800 a month. Hence the people who are staying here are leaving. Us who have certificates have known each other now for 15 years and know each other very well, help each other, etc. So that's what I'm here for. And thank you for everybody listening to my long story.
Thanks for sharing, and so glad you were able to find your happy place. That's good. It's great. It's great to hear. Linda.
Thanks, Greg, and good morning, everybody. And Becky, thanks for sharing that really great story. I'm Linda Nelson. I'm the Economic and Development Director for the town of Stonington. We are just finishing up a one-year housing task force for both Deer Isle and Stonington, which will give its final report within the next month or so. Our goal in Stonington is to put fishing families back by where they need to work. So to put the work of the working waterfronts in order to sustain it back with the people that do it. It's an incredible inequity to just think that waterfront property, highest and best use should be for people who can now afford it. What we need is our workers living back by our waterfront so they can check on their boats, so they can get to work without commuting, etc. My best housing experience, I've had the absolute privilege of living both in New York City and in Bath, Maine, in addition to Deer Isle, Stonington. So I love the density for sure, and Stonington's got it. So my best experience is that I've led the Jane Jacobs walk the first weekend in May every year for the last 5 years, and just got to hear all of the incredible stories of why Stonington is so dense and of the worker housing that existed above all of the commercial space, and why all those houses are so big and how many families they held and that there were 42 stores in Stonington. And while you can never go back to the past, we would like to restore some of that vibrancy because we've got the architecture and the whole village just beautifully, beautifully set for it.
That's for sure. All right. Thank you, Linda. And you also mentioned, and I forgot to mention this as well, that Deer Isle Stonington also has a joint municipal housing grant in the works. And if you want to just take a second to talk about the work that is part of that grant.
Yeah, the housing task force, the interlocal housing task force is definitely part of that grant. Also on screen today, Stu Kestenbaum, he's the co-chair of that task force. Holly Werner, she's a Maine service fellow that's devoted to housing and working on that opportunities grant program. And Jim just came on as well, the town manager for Deer Isle. So we're working on kind of establishing how we plan for our growth areas and plan for housing in our growth areas. Our economic resiliency plan in Stonington says that housing is our #1 priority. So all of the different ways and the spectrum of ways in which we establish that or return that are ways that are important to us. And that's what that program is about.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, maybe in a month or two, we can hear with that final report from the housing task force. That sounds really interesting. All right, Stuart, you are next.
Stuart Kestenbaum, co-chair of the Interlocal Housing Task Force of Deer Isle, Stonington. We talk about the peninsula, and we're at the place there's a bridge, and then we come along. I'm assuming when we say peninsula, we actually mean the island too. And when we discuss it, but nice to hear that. Feel a little left out that way. My best housing experience, not my best, but I grew up in full disclosure. And I should also say my connection today is unstable. I hope it's not a mental condition. It's just the internet. But I grew up in a small town, New Jersey, and I could walk everywhere I wanted to go. I could walk to the movie theater. I could walk to restaurants. I could walk to a park. I could walk to the library. Even though I often called my mom to give me, I actually could walk everywhere I needed to go. And I look back on it now, and it's a rare thing to have that kind of a downtown you could walk to and live in.
Sounds great. All right, thanks for joining us, Stuart. Let's go to Pam at Island Workforce Housing.
Hi there. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Great. Pam Dewell. I'm the Executive Director of Island Workforce Housing. We are in our third year of managing 10 units of workforce housing that we constructed in the town of Deer Isle. And it was built specifically for people with incomes ranging between 70 and 120% of the area median income. We are trying very hard to do a second project in the town of Stonington. Hopefully, that will be able to move forward in the near future. And as you were all describing your best housing situations, I was thinking that I've lived in some amazing places, and they were all just what I needed at the time, ranging from being the sole occupant of a 14-acre island to a 35,000-acre ranch in Wyoming to, this beautiful property in Deer Isle that I recently sold to begin a new chapter of my life. So they were all great at the time, but I think the thing that they all have in common is that they had beautiful natural resource assets, and they were all in small communities. Where I lived in Crowheart, the population was 32 at the time I lived. And I think it's important to be able to be at the store and pretty much know most of the people that you run into. And I just think it keeps us all honest and known to be in that situation.
Great. Thanks so much, Pam. Elizabeth Parrish. You're muted, Elizabeth.
Should be the bottom left of your screen, I think.
My mute button was being hidden by a removable bar at the left of my screen.
Greg, I think
Okay,
as host, you can also click and unmute people manually.
see if we do it. Thank you. I can ask her to unmute.
Hi, this is Jim. I'm town manager of Deer Isle. I'm jumping in quickly because it's a really busy day. We're doing solar power paving, and I'm at the transfer station putting in a new gate. So I'll say very quickly, Linda's already covered the projects we're working on. Thank you, Linda. Holly will probably say something if she hasn't. I've had trouble connecting out in the field. I'll say my best housing experience, because I'm a hands-on person, is helping build houses for people with Habitat for Humanity and some work I've done in developing countries. Thank you.
Hi, this is Liz
Awesome.
Parrish again.
Yeah,
Thank
go for
you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'm live in Castine. I have just recently, in the last 7 or 8 years, tried to get a senior assisted living complex in Castine, and it's not happened yet. But in the meantime, my husband and I used to live on Dice's Head, and we bought a 1790s house in the middle of Castine and turned it into 3 living units. We're in the first floor, rented the second floor, and there's a tree house, we call it, above the garage. And it's been very, very successful for us. And we thought we would miss our house on Dice's Head, but we love being in town. And so I'm interested in primarily in trying to get senior living in Castine, but and also working on the ad hoc housing committee.
Thank you. Holly.
Hello, I'm Holly. I'm the Maine Service Fellow working to extend capacity for housing projects between towns of Stonington and Deer Isle. And I think the best housing experience I had was I lived in cooperative housing in college, which was affordable and walkable and very collaborative. And it was a mix of undergrad and graduate students. So I had a lot of amazing mentorship that was able to happen through that housing.
Thanks so much. Bart.
Morning, everyone. Bart McCraw. I'm a resident of Orland. I'm also currently helping out with their comprehensive plan review for the housing chapter. So that's kind of one reason to be here today. And I'm also a member of the Hancock County Planning Commission's Board of Directors. Um, Housing experience, great ones. I think, like a couple other people, the two bigger places and communities that I lived in, they were great little communities, and they were more bedroom communities. But like Orland, and the other place in Southern Maine where I grew up, is very fortunate to kind of be within striking distance of larger areas, Bangor, Ellsworth. Lived pretty close to Portland and Lewiston, Auburn, so it was you had to drive. So it may not be like New Jersey or somewhere more urban, but you could get there from here.
Thanks, Bart. A few more to go. Rosa.
I was just getting a phone call right at the same time. So my name is Rosa. I'm the executive director for Home Inc. and our main campus is here in Orland. We're an organization that supports the homeless community or those experiencing homelessness, as well as providing housing in Hancock County, especially. Personally, I think the question, I came in a little late, so I'm sorry for that, but I think the question was a little bit about how you're connected with housing. And personally, outside of work, I'm someone that has experienced homelessness both as a child and as an adult, and I bring that to my work every day. I don't know if there's any more to the prompt, but I'm happy to be here and just to support housing initiatives in the area.
Yeah, glad to have you here. Thank you so much. Jerry Bada.
Hi, I'm Jerry. I self-administrate here at Home Incorporated in Orland. I'm also the president of the board of Covenant Community Land Trust, which is a nonprofit that builds affordable housing throughout Hancock County, including Sedgwick area. For housing experience, I'm probably growing up in northern Washington County. I always felt no matter how poor we were, and even if we were always somewhat homeless, you're still part of a community. So that's probably my best housing experience.
Right, thank you. And I believe, last but not least, Blossom. Blossom, are you there? All right.
Sorry, hi. It switched to driving mode again. Hi, I'm Blossom. I'm chairing Brooklyn's Affordable Housing Committee. Uh, I grew up in New York in the city and had a lot of experience with block housing and whatnot. So being up in Maine, things are a lot different. And I lived in some of the ICDC housing on Isle of Ho briefly when I was fishing with someone. So it's had a lot of jobs, but I have a lot of respect for what Isle of Ho does, and they've been doing their affordable housing for, I believe, about 40 years now. So it's really nice to see a program that has succeeded, and I kind of look towards that when I think about what we should do in Brooklyn. And I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Great, glad you're here. Yeah, ICDC is a great local program that they have going on Isle of Ho. Maybe that's one that could be shared as an example in future meetings. All right, it took a minute, but I think it was important not only to just start off on a positive note, because we all know how the housing conversation goes sometimes, but just a good reminder of how a good housing and good community can really affect you, and something to continue to work towards as far as keeping those feelings, moments alive. All right. So as we continue to go through the last 25 minutes or so, mostly wanted to get your feedback and thoughts on what you're most looking to take away from these forum sessions and how they can be most impactful. I sent out a couple of emails prior to all of this being set up asking for your feedback on a few different things, one of which was topics of discussion, and got a handful of responses already, including various financing programs, alternatives for creative housing solutions, including home sharing, information about local policies, low-cost construction ideas, perceived biggest barriers, home safety and repair for older adults, and what it means to age safely. These are just some of the ideas that were already shared, but wanted to take a few minutes in case you were not able to provide any feedback or had a new idea, if you wanted to share those now. So more than welcome to hear any other ideas for topics that might want to be discussed in this forum. And you can raise your hand or just start talking, I suppose. Bruce, I see your hand.
It's not an idea for a topic, but I'm thinking that the RFP that we just finished, if there's a way to integrate what this committee would be doing and some of the findings and research of what would go on in the study, I think would be very useful. I mean, all of the topics that you listed below are things that really are almost part of the RFP. So if they're working on that and gathering information and finding results, then it seems like we could benefit.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Linda, go ahead.
Thanks, Greg. I think, given especially who's on the screen, I think that we should add ways that municipalities can incentivize and support housing efforts. I think what I'm finding in our own work is that municipal leaders often don't feel like housing is really any of their concern, other than that they need it and they want to seek outside help for it. And I would like us to also focus on what are the municipal tools that might help lower the production costs of housing, which there are, and examples of that, which there are, so that in our areas we can really think about the role of municipalities in housing as we move forward.
Excellent. Yes, thank you. Alan.
Yeah, Linda, I want to appreciate that. And I want to follow up on your comment because I mentioned at the outset that I'm co-coordinator of Blue Hill Peninsula tomorrow, where we're focusing on climate issues. And I mentioned that housing is a fundamental component of achieving climate resilience. So I wanted to just mention that in addition to the work that has been already mentioned, Blue Hill Peninsula tomorrow has a grant to do a social vulnerability assessment. We've already hired a consultant to help us look at how social service agencies can help vulnerable priority populations in the towns of Surrey, Castine, Penobscot, and Blue Hill. Emma Weed, who a number of you know as our new climate resilience coordinator, will be working on that with Liz Hertz. You may know Liz Hertz, having done similar work elsewhere in the state. So I think that's going to be a good overlapping complementary effort. And specifically to Linda's point, one of Emma Weed's responsibilities for all 9 towns on the peninsula, including Deer Island, Stonington, is to work with the town officials, the select board, on a specific project that deals with climate resilience. And to the extent that a community identifies housing as something that it really wants to dig into, Emma will be available to help our towns with that. So I just wanted to put that overlapping and complementary idea out there in front of all of us. This is a really impressive group that we have. I think we have a lot of things that we're going to achieve together. So thank you.
All right, thank you, Alan. Becky, go ahead. And you're on mute again.
Well, you didn't hear me swear anyway. Whoops. So I'd like to piggyback on the last 2 speakers' interest in connecting with the the local select boards and planning boards, because, you know, at the moment, Blue Hill has just bought a huge property for a lot of money and have pretty much ignored the fact that the Harborview Apartments have now slipped over into the private market from a government-supported program, and without any thoughts about it. And I think that all of us, whether we realize it or not, are in really, you know, with a stroke of that famous pen of Musk's, could be wiped out of our homes very shortly. So I think there needs to be what do you call it? Emergency plans in purpose, not future plans. But what are you going to do with the 27 units of elderly people in this place who are ditched out onto the road if it happens, which is very possible at this point. Anyway.
Reserving that affordable housing. Yes, thank you. George from Surrey.
Yeah, thank you. I've got a couple of thoughts. These are all very worthy ideas, but one I'd like to suggest. I'm really pleased to see people from the Blue Hill Heritage Trust in this forum because of I'm intrigued by the emerging conversation to expand the definition of conservation of land to focus on the conservation of communities. And I'm interested in the potential for maybe some kinds of partnerships between land trusts and housing development. And then the second topic, which tends to be difficult to discuss in a local level, but maybe in an aggregate level as an entire peninsula, we can look more seriously at and analyze the actual impact of short-term rentals. I think short-term rentals are definitely having impact, both positive and negative, on our communities, and we should find a way to guide and manage that impact so that it's more positive and less negative.
Great. Thank you, George. Pam, go ahead.
Thanks. This is a pretty great list already, and frankly, you know, I think narrowing a focus and maybe going deep on especially policies and barriers would be immensely helpful. I think that those really are the biggest impediments. With our projects, we don't receive any government funding. The reason for that is the only grants available are for lower income rather than the workforce niche that we've identified. I think that, you know, each community is going to be different with that, but I do think a lot of the policies and barriers could be overarching. And I think a lot of it also just comes from people not understanding what could happen. So clearly, you know, some vision and some attention to what things could look like would be enormously helpful in each community, I think.
Great idea. Thank you. All right. Excellent. Well, that is a very strong list to work with moving forward. And obviously, if you have any other thoughts and ideas, you can shoot me an email. I'll make sure it's in the chat. And Olivia, you can shoot her an email too, and we'll make sure that's in the chat before the meeting's over. I also asked initially any sort of speakers or types of presenters that you might want to see throughout this forum. Also got some good feedback, hearing from affordable housing developers and local contractors. Maine Housing was mentioned a few times as a possible speaker, maybe about their programs or other stuff that they offer. Genesis Fund, which I think have all have talked to and worked with a bit in the past. Various housing and nonprofits, Habitat for Humanity, and hearing from employers that have created housing for their workforce staff. I'm sure the list can be added to. Any others?
Greg, I'd like to suggest under the first bullet, veterans We have a number of veterans who live in our area, and housing can be an issue for them as well.
Okay, thank you.
Where one of the conversations that we've had with the Blue Hill Peninsula housing is around the possibility of retrofitting larger homes. And it was good to hear Elizabeth speaking of the 3 levels of her home in Castine. A realtor as a possible partner. Although I suppose in some ways there are conflicts of interest. I think we all have different interests. But it'd be to know what are some of the vacant homes or available houses that could be turned into affordable housing of some kind.
Yeah, definitely worth hearing from their side of the housing story for sure. Any other initial thoughts on additional types of speakers or presenters?
Oh, I didn't know these are presenters, but participants. I would suggest the Healthy Island Project, which has been doing work with keeping people in their homes. I don't know if Healthy Peninsula Project does similar things, but I think they'd be a good
Right. I
addition.
think I've been in touch with someone from, I think, Healthy Peninsula, but that's a good suggestion. And we're going to get to, I guess, next, we will get to additional people that should be part of the conversation as well. George from Surrey, go ahead.
There's been a deserved focus on housing for seniors and housing for homeless and housing for lower income people. But I'd like to add both as a topic and maybe if there's a way to involve people and or speakers, an emphasis on attracting young families to the Blue Hill Peninsula. It's necessary for to offset the gentrification and ageification of our peninsula in order to create continuing vital communities and to maintain a workforce.
Thanks, George. Well, go ahead.
I was going to suggest that program that was brought up in the introductions, the ICDC on Idaho. Did I get that right? If that's a program that's been around for a while and is very successful, having them describe what they did would probably be helpful. And then maybe someone from a larger employer, when they're talking about workforce housing, maybe they would have some ideas on programs or things they're working on.
All right.
Sorry, I don't have
Thank
my
you.
little yellow hand function set up. Vinyl Haven Housing Project was one that several of us attended it was either Knox County or Penn Bay area. And Vinyl Haven has done some really interesting work over the last number of years, and they might be a good speaker to bring in.
Yeah, explore that a little bit. That's a good idea. Thank you. Becky, go ahead.
Banking. Oops. Have I?
You
Oh,
good.
I never unmuted. I think some banking officials might be interesting. I know Franklin Bank, which is a mutual bank, has a slightly different, and also Seaport, might have different understandings of how they loan money to people. It might be interesting to see some financial movement from banks, or at least to contact them that we're very concerned.
All right, great. All right, excellent. To keep things moving along, Stuart, to your point, attendance. Who else should be attending these forums that might not be represented, and the best way to contact them? And so suggestions that I already received, again, local contractors and builders, local banks and lending organizations. To your point, Becky, the Home and Emmaus homeless shelters. We have a couple of representatives from Home today, as well as having people seeking housing. Maybe we should be talking about and participating in these conversations. Other representatives and individuals you think should be part of these conversations?
To echo what Clifton or maybe it was Bruce said, select board members of the different towns.
Sure.
Sure if this has already been suggested exactly or if it's a specific group, but with younger folks who are trying to maybe, both enter the workforce and live in the communities where they grew up, if there's some people who could represent that group who are looking for housing and they're like looking, but it's a more specific group of people who are trying to stay where they traditionally lived. And I think, for my family, that's been a challenge to be able to remain in the Blue Hill area because of the costs being so high and all of that, but having traditionally lived there and growing up.
Gotcha. So maybe folks that can help with that transition or are part of programs that can help with that transition.
Hi, this is Liz Parrish. I also think we might talk to someone in the healthcare industry because we need more places for seniors to be able to live in either assisted living or memory care in our area. And I know the health system is in terrible flux right now, but we need to sort of work with healthcare when we're talking about seniors.
Good call, Elizabeth. Thank you. George from Surrey, go ahead.
Two other speakers that might be useful. Anticipating that one of the major constraints to increase density and diversified housing forms are the zoning laws that we have is to have some legal expert on zoning talk to us about innovative tools like overlay zoning districts and conditional use zones and other zoning practices that could encourage planned unit developments and cluster housing.
Thank you.
Greg, one thing, Clifton here. Affordability in construction is a big issue, and it looks like manufactured housing is the way things are going. So to get somebody representing manufactured housing and discussing the pros and cons and how it's done, I think could be very good as well, because I think that may be the way the construction business for at least affordable housing is going.
Excellent. And I guess on any of these topics, or as far as individuals that we think should be here, if you have contacts, or if you need me to be put in contact with someone, or if you want to do direct outreach to them, you're more than welcome to do so in any capacity you might see fit. Stuart, go ahead.
Yeah, I was thinking since natural resources are an issue with housing, particularly on the island in terms of water and hydrology, to have a speaker who could talk about waste to land usage, look at natural resources, to give us a way to approach those issues.
Approach natural resources. All right, good.
Yeah, almost like a carrying people that might understand carrying capacities, right? For confined coastal areas. I think that's super important. We do have limited resources here, particularly water, throughout the whole peninsula. And I think it would be worth discussing that. Thanks, Stu.
Yeah, excellent. All right, and I guess one thing that I didn't ask or mention, Monday at 10 a.m. I know it's early in the week, early in the day. Do you feel like this is an adequate time? I know the crowd for the first group is pretty respondent. Just any suggestions on keeping or whether maybe modifications should be made to the time and place? And if everyone is okay with this, then maybe we can keep it going for the next couple meetings and see how it shakes out. Okay. I'm not hearing any objections. So again, you can shoot me or Olivia an email with any thoughts on that. All right. Well, we got a few minutes left. A lot of ideas for future topics, which is great. And so I think in the meantime, Olivia and I will get together and continue to plan out the next month's topic. Feedback and ideas are always welcome. And before we leave, this is definitely a group where I should mention this. Olivia just posted a link in the chat. On Friday, October 17th, if you haven't heard or been invited to already, HCPC is hosting a regional developer summit at the Schoodic Institute. That is going to run from 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. And again, Olivia just dropped the link in the chat, and you can go to that link to find out more information and to register. Half-day event where I will be giving a brief presentation on the housing needs assessment for Hancock County that we published at the beginning of this year. There will be a panel discussion with 4 different folks involved in the developer space where we'll have questions and hopefully time for Q&A afterwards. Lunch will be made available. I should mention this is a free event, so costs, hopefully, other than transportation, will not be a limiting factor. And then after lunch, hosting a few different breakout rooms on topics that are still yet to be determined. We're waiting to see what kind of response we get. To decide those topics and delve a little further into a few different areas. And then kind of wrap things up right around 1 p.m. and send everyone on their way. But the point of the event is just to get developers and officials and housing stakeholders like yourself all into one room to, again, just continue the conversation, share ideas, and keep all these ideas and projects moving forward. So I couldn't have ended the meeting without mentioning that. Any final thoughts before we wrap up? I'll stop sharing this.
Just a question. Are you in the planning office in Ellsworth?
We are in the office typically Tuesday through Thursday. And if you don't know, our office is now on Main Street in Ellsworth. We're on the 3rd floor of the Camden National Bank building. Doors are always open as long as we're there.
What was the time again?
For
Tuesday through Thursday?
Tuesday through Thursday, we're there typically from 9 to 5.
Okay.
And Pam, I see in the chat that the development team for Island Workforce Housing can potentially talk about Oliver's Ridge and the success there. I think that would be another great topic and a great example of a successful housing project. Okay. Well, I think that'll do it for the first session. Thank you so much for dedicating your time and being involved in all this. We really appreciate it. And I think Olivia and I are very excited to keep these meetings rolling and keep the conversation going. A follow-up email will be sent out with topics that we discussed, or links of things we discussed today, and a summary of the meeting. And then another email will be sent out prior to next month's meeting with a topic and links and all the information. And I should mention that on HCPC's website, we will have a page dedicated to this forum that you will be able to go to access the recording and any meeting notes. And that will be shared in the follow-up that is sent out in the next, several days. And that's where everything will live as time goes on. So until, I guess, November, probably see a handful of you in the meantime, be talking to you in a handful of you in the meantime, but have a great rest of your Monday and a great rest of your week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep. Hello, everybody.